I knew something was off when the keynote speaker mispronounced my name, and I wasn't even supposed to be a keynote. Please welcome, Lena Gracelin, former CTO of Cloud Harbor Solutions. My name is Alina Grace. No Lynn, no former. And I never agreed to be introduced like roadkill under a LinkedIn post. But I stood up anyway. In heels, I'd rehearsed war in, with a click that could split silence. I walked past industry execs who used to ask me to bless their white papers, past recruiters who'd once tried to poach me at baby showers. Half of them avoided eye contact. The other half, too polite to admit they knew exactly what this was, a public burial. I took the stage. The mic smelled like mouthwash and betrayal. I wasn't scheduled to speak, I said. So let's talk about truth. Dead silence. One woman in the front row shifted uncomfortably, clutching her compliance notebook like a Bible. I pulled a folded letter from my blazer. No logo, no signature. Just one line, printed in 12 PT times New Roman. Effective immediately, Alina Grace is no longer considered a collaborative partner within recognized industry consortiums. They'd blacklisted me, without warning. No trial, no cause. Just erased me from a decade of infrastructure, protocol, innovation I helped build from scratch while half those men were still Googling how to pivot to tech. I waited. The moderators whispered. A guy near the back actually started clapping, alone. Brave, stupid. I smiled, folded the letter back up, and said into the mic, "You forgot something." And I walked off that stage like I was walking away from a slow explosion. 3 hours later, I sat across from Marissa Talbot, head of regulatory standards for Arc Bridge Solutions, in a glass-walled conference room overlooking a city I used to run. She was drinking something green and smug. "You're taking this very personally," she said. "It's not an attack, it's just alignment." Alignment, I repeated, interesting word. Especially from a company whose last compliance certificate was pushed through by my consultancy. She blinked. Twice. She didn't know. God, they really didn't know. See, my consultancy isn't listed under my name. It's buried under shellcore, legal walls, and NDAs so tight they could make the Vatican blush. I built it that way on purpose. After the first time I got cut out of a deal, I originated, patented, and launched. They thought they exiled me. They didn't realize I had my hand on the pipeline that feeds their entire certification process. One stroke of my pen, Arc Bridge would go from compliant to under federal review faster than you can say ESG scandal. But I didn't say that. Not yet. Instead, I leaned in, smiled like a shark in lipstick, and said, "Tell me more about this alignment." She started talking, and while she did, I opened the folder in front of me and slowly slid a photo across the table. Not a threat, just a picture. It was taken 2 nights ago. Her CEO, her compliance director, a very specific envelope passed hand to hand over dinner with a known lobbyist. The color drained from her face. She didn't know that either, but she would. And that's when I decided, if they wanted me blacklisted, fine. I'd just burn the list and make damn sure they were the next names written on it. 2 days earlier, that photo had cost me $14,000 and a dinner with a PI who smelled like wet corduroy and whiskey-soured shame. Slid it across the diner table between a crusty plate of eggs and a napkin scribbled with hotel room numbers. "I don't usually do corporate stuff," he muttered. "But your name opens doors in this town." "Not anymore," I said, folding the photo carefully. "That's why I'm paying in advance." He gave a one-nostril chuckle. "You know what your problem is, Grace? I have a few. Pick one. You still play by rules that expired when Blackberries were cool." He wasn't wrong. Used to believe in meritocracy. I built tools that made entire departments obsolete and still sent thank you emails afterward. I believed competence mattered. But here's the truth no one puts in the shareholder reports. Industries aren't run by innovators. They're run by brunches. And at one of those brunches I got erased. Not laid off, not voted out. Orphaned. No one returned my calls. Slack threads disappeared. Contracts gone cold like bad soup. And the kicker, my name was stripped from a patent I developed. A security middleware framework that now had Arc Bridge's lead architect listed as co-creator. A man who once asked me how to open a ZIP file. That's when I found the loophole. They thought my consultancy, Criterion Verge, was just another third-party shell firm with a forgettable logo and a recycled slogan: integrity, velocity, vision. Cute, right? What they never traced, because they never bothered, is that I incorporated Criterion through a legal proxy tied to an Arizona trust I inherited from my aunt, a retired librarian with a knack for hiding assets in poetry foundations. So while they lobbied to blacklist me, they kept paying Criterion Verge for compliance reviews, unaware that every contract they approved passed through my desk. Not metaphorically. Physically. My initials were on every inspection protocol, hidden in the margins like scars. Now back to Marissa Talbot, sitting across from me in that glass conference room, trying to make sense of the photo I'd shown her. What are you implying? She asked, blinking hard. This is circumstantial. Of course it is, I said. That's why I have 5 more. She stood up like a marionette getting its strings yanked. This is blackmail. No, I said, standing too. Blackmail is a crime. I'm offering clarity. You tried to bury me. And now I'm just excavating truth. I left the photos on the table. Let her sweat in recycled HVAC air and corporate perfume. Outside, I lit a cigarette for the first time in 6 years. Didn't even inhale, just like the smell of combustion. By the time I got back to my office, small, sharp, windowless by choice, my assistant had forwarded another batch of emails. 3 more firms had quietly cut ties. Looks like the blacklist's spreading, she said. Want me to draft a public statement? No, I said, scrolling. Draft a full audit list for Arc Bridge and every company who signed their last cycle under Verge. Flag everything. You want red flags. I want a FC King forest fire. That night, I opened a bottle of Tempranillo I'd been saving since my exit bonus from Cloud Harbor, poured exactly 1 glass, and mapped out the entire network on my office whiteboard. Each CEO, each board member, each whisper campaign. I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to make the industry audit itself. And the first domino, a man named Harold Creel, the VP of Partnerships who helped forge my signature on that patent reassignment. He had no idea I'd found his off-the-books consulting gig. Yet, Harold Creel always struck me as the kind of man who called his wife mother and had a fetish for parking validation. Once told a room full of interns that integrity is the cornerstone of partnerships, then tried to expense a $900 massage in Vegas under networking. So when his name popped up in the invoice history of a shell firm tied to a competitor we had red flagged for bribery 2 years ago, I didn't feel rage. I felt cold, surgical, ready. The shell firm was called Delthane Limited. Harmless sounding, Cayman registered, and stupidly sloppy. One of their quarterly reports had his initials in the comments of the PDF metadata. Rookie mistake, like tagging your Tinder hookup in a Slack thread. I stared at that document for a long time, sipping black coffee that tasted like despair and progress. Then I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in 6 years. Grace, the voice rasped on the other end. Holy hell, they resurrected you. Nice to hear your bitterness still ages like bourbon, Dan. I need a trace run. He whistled low. What are we tracing? Money, influence, and Harold Creel's second phone. Burner, no dumber. Company-issued iPhone he renamed in iCloud as backup. Like a moron, Dan laughed. God, I've missed you. Don't get sentimental. I need this clean. No pings, no alerts. Can you ghost the trace? I'll do it like a priest on Sunday. By the next morning, I had the log. And it was beautiful. Creel's little backup phone had pinged 3 locations that week. 1, the Arc Bridge main office. 2, a boutique wine bar in Menlo Park, where the VP of Strategic Mergers from Helix Data was hosting off-the-record interviews. 3, a building owned by the federal office that certifies industry-wide compliance frameworks. That last one was interesting, because Harold Creel had never had clearance there. Not officially. And 2 days after that visit, my blacklisting email was circulated to every company in our sector, mysteriously leaked by a so-called anonymous internal memo. They used the feds as cover. They used my consultancy's reputation as their shield. And then they tried to bury me under the dirt I used to till for them. So I made a decision. No more warnings. No more polite suggestions. I was going to weaponize compliance itself. The next day, I scheduled a meeting with the Office of Digital Standards and Security under the guise of requesting clarification for recent ambiguities in interfirm audit coordination. Bureaucracy speak for, I know what you did, and I'm here to make you sweat for it. I wore the same dress I'd worn to accept the Innovator of the Year award back in 2017. Black, minimalist, cut like a scalpel. Inside the meeting room, 2 analysts sat in silence as I laid out my packet. It wasn't an accusation. It was an education. Here's how Delthane Limited paid Arc Bridge's VP through indirect affiliate billing. Page flip. Here's the altered metadata from Harold Creel's last patent filing. Timestamped. Geolocked. page flip. And here's a list of companies that received expedited certification despite clear regulatory conflicts of interest, each one signed off by Criterion Verge. My firm, my name, used without my knowledge, I let that settle. One of the analysts swallowed so hard I heard it over the ticking clock. Miss Grace, are you suggesting falsified certification? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating that if I were you, I'd open an independent investigation immediately. And if you don't, well, the press will. I stood up, tucked the file back into my bag, and said, oh, and one last thing. I'd like to formally request a red audit on every entity that's publicly blacklisted me. On record. Starting with Arc Bridge Solutions and Helix Data. Their eyes widened, because they knew what a red audit meant. Not just oversight, exposure. And in this business, exposure burns. Red audits are like controlled demolitions, loud, technical, and designed to reveal exactly where the rot is hiding. You don't call for one unless you're ready to pull the whole damn roof down. I was, with gloves off and teeth bared. By Friday morning, I'd triggered 6. The Office of Digital Standards didn't even try to delay. They knew if they didn't move, I would. And I had journalists circling like seagulls around a capsized yacht. But the real game began when I got a call from Harold Creel himself. Miss Grace, he said, like my name gave him indigestion. We should talk. He invited me to a neutral venue. Translation, somewhere with exit routes and plausible deniability. He chose a golf club lounge in Palo Alto, somewhere white noise machines hummed between overpriced bourbon and back-channel deals. I wore a red blazer, no shirt underneath. Power move. I sat at the bar, didn't look up when he approached. You're causing trouble, he said, sitting beside me like we were old college buddies. No, Harold, I murmured. You caused trouble. I'm just narrating the fallout. Cleared his throat. The red audits, this isn't just about you. Of course not, I said. It's about everyone who thought they could suck the marrow from my work and leave me on the blacklist like a PR liability. He reached into his coat pocket, slid over a thick white envelope. Old school, tacky. What is this? I asked, not touching it, a bribe or a death threat in cursive. Settlement offer, he said. 7 figures. NDA included. You disappear, we clean this up. Walk away with dignity. I laughed so hard the bartender flinched. You think I want dignity, Harold? I had dignity. Right up until the moment you had my name stripped from the system I built and sold it to Helix Data with your signature on the patent. He went still. There it was. I leaned in close, voice low and razor sharp. I want reputations. I want consequences. Want to hear the sound your board makes when they realize the SEC is 5 minutes from knocking. His jaw twitched. You do this, he said, and you'll never work in this town again. Already blacklisted, remember? Your threats expired. I stood, grabbed my clutch, and whispered, and Harold, nice burner phone. You should have turned off location sharing. I left the envelope untouched and walked out with more fire in my heels than I'd felt in years. Back at the office, my assistant was pale. Got a problem, she said. Criterion's name just got leaked as the compliance body issuing Arc Bridges certificates. Perfect, I smiled. Who leaked it? Anonymous, she said. But the phrasing matches your op-eds from last year. Someone's trying to pin this on you now. Of course they were. Now that I was too loud to ignore, they'd try to reverse the polarity, paint me as the architect of the rot instead of the whistleblower. Good. Let them. Because I had one last ace left, 92-slide deck, prepared 5 years ago when I first suspected the industry might turn on me. A full, time-stamped autopsy of the compliance process from day 1 to the present, with code commits, billing trails, and audio clips. It was titled, In the Event of My Betrayal, and I was ready to make it public. Slide 37 was where most people's jaws dropped. It detailed the recursive loophole that allowed Arc Bridge, Helix Data, 6 independent partners to greenlight each other's compliance certificates using subsidiaries masquerading as third-party verifiers. Shell firms issuing shell seals. It was elegant, devious, and entirely illegal. Slide 58, that was the real throat punch, a voice recording. Harold Creel 2 years ago, late at night, half drunk on Glenfiddich, telling someone over a speakerphone, Grace is brilliant, yeah, but she's also inconvenient. She doesn't shut up. We need people who follow brand, not code. If she gets wind of the Helix pivot, we've got a problem. He laughed, they laughed. Slide 74, it was me. Walking out of Cloud Harbor, badge deactivated, escorted by a security guard who couldn't even meet my eyes. That moment was going live, but before I could upload, something else dropped. My phone buzzed. A message from an encrypted number. Check the interlink data wire feed, trying to bury you in real time. I opened the feed. A breaking news banner scrolled across the bottom. Whistleblower behind Criterion Verge unmasked as key player in industry-wide certification scandal. They didn't just leak my connection, they reframed the whole thing, made it look like I was the corrupt link, the queenpin, the mastermind behind the fraud I was trying to expose. And it was working. Online forums were already eating it up, set the whole thing up to extort competitors. Guess she wasn't the feminist icon we thought. Too smart for her own good, just another snake in heels. My hands were steady, but my heart was chewing glass. They were fast, coordinated, desperate. But desperation makes people sloppy. That same encrypted number sent a second message. Look at the byline. I did. The journalist who wrote the exposé, Rachel Wynn. She used to work for me. A junior strategist. I'd mentored her for 2 years, taught her how to think upstream, helped her rebuild her life after a public divorce. She knew everything. I found her at a rooftop bar that night, the kind of place where candles stay lit no matter the wind and martinis cost more than groceries. She looked up, startled. Alina, you wrote it, I said, no preamble. They fed you half the story and you swallowed it whole. She stood, defensive. I got documents. Transfers. Criterion's ownership trail leads back to you. That's not conspiracy, it's facts. It's facts shaped by omission, I snapped. Did they mention the altered patents, the ghost sign-offs, the burner meetups? No, of course not, because you didn't ask. Why would they fake all that? She asked, voice cracking. Why go that far? Because I know too much, I said. And because I can take down every damn tower they've built with one email. Rachel hesitated, then send it. What? Prove it. Leak your slides? Go scorched earth. You taught me to bet on data, not drama. For a moment, I looked at her like I didn't recognize her anymore. But maybe she was right. They wanted to turn me into the villain? Fine, let's make it official. I went home, booted the offline server I hadn't touched in 5 years, uploaded the deck to a hidden page, added timestamps, verified credentials, and watermarks that traced every signature to its origin. Then I pressed send, not to the media, not to the regulators, but to every company who'd ever used Arc Bridge's services, all 417 of them. Subject line, your compliance may be invalid. Here's why. 10 minutes later, the first callback came, then another and another. By morning, the industry wasn't whispering anymore. It was screaming. The first voicemail came from a procurement director in Austin. His voice was trembling. Miss Grace, we just cross-checked your slides against our Helix data certification logs. Jesus, you're right. 3 years of renewals, invalid. If this breaks publicly, we're done. The second was less polite. What kind of stunt are you pulling? You just tanked our stock 12%. Do you realize what kind of legal exposure this opens us to? Yes, I knew exactly what kind. By the end of the day, 6 C-level resignations had been announced across firms that hadn't made the news in a decade. My inbox had turned into a battlefield triage center. Some were begging me to redact details. Others were offering to collaborate on narrative control. But the real earthquake hit at 3:17 p.m. when the Office of Digital Standards published an emergency bulletin. Effective immediately, all compliance certificates issued through Criterion Verge over the last 36 months are under review. Interim status, pending. That one word sent entire investment portfolios into freefall. It meant companies couldn't prove they were secure, which meant they couldn't close deals, which meant their competitors, the ones not implicated, were suddenly predators in a field of wounded prey. Arc Bridge, their servers went dark for 3 hours. Helix Data quietly removed patented middleware infrastructure from their homepage. Harold Creel, nowhere to be seen, but I wasn't done, because there was still one document that hadn't been leaked, a memo, dated 11 months ago, signed by 5 industry board members, including Marissa Talbot. It detailed a proposal to gradually phase me out of relevance by using my own firm as a laundering tool for questionable compliance processes. Their reasoning. Lena Grace's reputation provides plausible cover. Use her as the mask until transition is complete. And at the bottom, in chicken scratch cursive, the last line, once blacklisted, she's politically neutralized. No firm will touch her. They were right about one thing. No firm would touch me, because I wasn't one of them anymore. I was the reckoning. I sent that memo, along with the signatures, to every regulatory body, ethics board, investigative journalist I'd ever shaken hands with. Even the ones I hated, even the ones who ghosted me when the blacklist hit. I attached no note, just the subject line, still think I'm the villain? Then I turned off my phone, walked into my apartment, and found it had been broken into. Not ransacked, not robbed. Everything was clean, too clean. My desk had been wiped down. My external drives, all still there, had clearly been cloned. My safe was untouched, but the carpet just beneath it was misaligned by a single inch. I sat on the couch, heart slow, mind racing. This wasn't desperation anymore. This was panic. Whoever was still standing on the other side of this war, they weren't trying to silence me. They were trying to erase me, which meant I needed to disappear first, on my own terms, and take every last file with me. Spent the next 48 hours off-grid in a roadside motel that reeked of mildew and cheap air freshener, the kind of place where even the roaches carry switchblades. I brought nothing but a burner laptop, 3 encrypted drives, and a pistol I hadn't touched since my ex-husband forgot who owned the deed to the lake house. I didn't sleep. I decrypted everything, cross-checked timestamps, verified every data trail, every voice memo, every quietly rerouted invoice. I needed this last act to be bulletproof, because whoever had broken into my apartment hadn't just come for copies, they'd come to assess damage. And the way they left everything behind, they weren't done yet. I finished compiling my extinction protocol at 4:32 a.m. That's what I called it in the metadata, a final package containing every actionable piece of evidence that could nuke Arc Bridge, Helix data, the entire corrupt certification ecosystem from orbit. But this wasn't about leaks anymore. It was about detonation. So I sent it to one person. Her name was Khadija Rao, senior investigator at the Federal Office of Infrastructure Integrity. She and I had nearly burned each other to the ground 7 years ago when I exposed her ex-husband's conflict of interest in a zoning scandal. She hated me, which made her perfect, because Khadija hated corruption more than she hated me. My message was short, no strings, no PR games, just justice. You want it, you take it. You don't, I will. Then I hit send and started the clock. Meanwhile, the industry was disintegrating in slow motion. 2 mid-sized firms halted operations indefinitely. A publicly traded tech conglomerate issued a full retraction of its compliance history and disclosed pending SEC involvement. Whispers of civil suits, racketeering charges, even conspiracy to commit regulatory fraud began surfacing in hushed investor calls. I watched from the shadows as the machine I built was gutted, its guts spilled across headlines, inboxes, boardrooms. I didn't speak to the press, didn't tweet, didn't gloat. I wanted them to feel the silence. And then, 4 days after sending the package, I got a call. Unknown number. Washington, D.C. area code. I answered. Alina Grace. Firm voice asked. Yes, this is Khadija Rao. I've reviewed your evidence. You didn't just uncover a compliance failure. You documented a full-blown institutional rot that touches 3 federal offices and 7 state-level review boards. I'm aware. You realize the moment I move on this, it's going to bring hell with it. These people don't go down quietly. I'm counting on it. There was a pause. She said, you're either the most dangerous whistleblower this country's ever seen or the best set-up artist since Enron. Why not both? That made her laugh, cold, honest. Then she said, we're moving. You might want to disappear for a while. I already have. I hung up. Then I opened a private browser and logged into a domain no one but me had access to, www.verifitracenet, a brand new certification registry. Transparent. Immutable, blockchain-backed, clean as virgin snow, and at the bottom, powered by Grace Verification Group. Let them burn the old world. I was already building the next one. The subpoenas hit on a Thursday. 16 issued in under 90 minutes. The kind of coordinated blitz you usually only see in Netflix docuseries or mob takedowns. Harold Creel was detained at SFO with a carry-on full of shredded documents and a forged diplomatic credential card. Arc Bridge's headquarters were raided, servers confiscated, compliance officers escorted out mid-Zoom call. Marissa Talbot? She tried to preemptively resign, claimed she'd been misled. But the internal memo with her signature, the one that labeled me plausible cover, was already in the hands of every journalist with a press pass and a grudge. By Friday, 6 federal investigations were active. By Sunday, 2 international firms had filed billion-dollar lawsuits. Monday, the blacklist that had erased me didn't exist anymore. Gone, vanished from the consortium site. No retraction, no apology, just wiped clean like it never happened. But I remembered, and so did the industry. I returned to the public eye not with a vengeance post or a viral TED talk, but with a launch. Grace Verification Group went live with 3 clients on day 1. All legacy firms burned by the scandal, desperate for something real, something incorruptible. I made them sign conduct contracts so strict they made Catholic school look like Burning Man. And the best part? Every certificate we issued included a tiny footer line, non-negotiable, non-removable, verified through GVG. Fraudulent systems designed by the same people who blacklisted Alina Grace. A tiny blade, hidden in plain sight, my inbox filled with offers, advisory boards, speaking gigs, book deals. I ignored most, but I did accept one invite to a closed-door summit hosted by the same compliance consortium that once disowned me. I walked in wearing the same red blazer I wore the day Harold tried to bribe me, and I watched the room shift like it smelled smoke. One exec actually stood to shake my hand. "Alina," he said, fake smile trembling, "I want to personally say, what happened to you was unconscionable." I leaned in, smiled back, and whispered, "No, what happened to you was inevitable." I left before dessert. Let them chew on their own discomfort. That night, back in my apartment, restored, secure, and finally quiet, I poured a glass of scotch and opened my laptop. One new message, no sender, no subject, just one sentence: "You built the fire. Now don't let them rebuild the match factory." I stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. I don't need warnings anymore, because I'm not scared of being blacklisted. I am the list. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.